G'day, I'm Paul. The Tesla Model 3, it's one of the best-selling cars in Australia and also one of the best-selling EVs as well. Tesla has just done an update to this, and while it may look incredibly minor, there is actually a lot that has changed here. I'm going to run you through as much as I possibly can today. So this is the entry-level Tesla Model 3. Prices have gone up by almost $5,000, so it's now starting at just under 62 grand. But it is still pretty good value for money when you look at what you're getting. Now this competes with things like the BYD Seal and I guess the Polestar too, except that has become so expensive and is almost exclusively used by rental fleets by the look of it at the moment. So I think the Seal is really its only logical competitor. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. So if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you can use the time codes that are on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you can find out every single time we review a new Tesla. Now, before we kick off, Tesla had to stop selling this car in Australia and also stop delivering it to customers because it breached some design rules for selling cars in Australia. In fact, it was the same design rules that BYD breached when they launched the Atto 3 in Australia. So what we had to do, because Tesla cancelled our upcoming loan for the vehicle, we actually had to rent this car. So this car has been rented from Turo, from a mob called Karma Car Hire. We paid full price for it, but I just wanted to mention them because their service has been great and they've let us bring it here to the proving ground where we're going to be driving it beyond what a normal customer would do. Hey everyone, sorry to interrupt this video. We're in Tucson at the moment with the new Lexus GX. I just wanted to mention that since filming the video with the Model 3, it's now gone back on sale. They resolved the ADR issues and all of those child anchorage points are now fixed. They're delivering cars again and they're now on sale as well. So any reference in this video to it not being on sale is now fixed and the cars are back and available to order and to be delivered to customers. Now, let's talk about your exterior design. We'll start off with the colors. So the optional colors are pretty expensive. If you don't go white, we're talking about $1,500 all the way up to $2,600. So that is pretty expensive for an optional color on a car today, especially on one that's in this sort of price bracket. And sorry about the flights as well. I'm going to be doing a lot of waving. Now, main thing you're going to notice down the front here is the change in the headlights. So they're now this thin strip that runs along there. You'll notice there is no fog light down here. That's all been integrated here within that headlight cluster. The reason they changed the design at the front here and also other parts of the car is to improve aerodynamics. Now, improving aerodynamics buys you range, and that's what they've wanted to be able to do here, to be able to advertise a longer range vehicle. Even the old headlights still had all the clusters required to do matrix LED, and this appears to have the exact same setup, but at this stage, it doesn't appear to actually have any of that active. That is all going to be software driven, and they probably haven't figured out exactly how to do it yet. The other thing you're going to notice as well down the front here is no more parking sensors at the front or the rear. A lot of the European delivered cars already had this, but in Australia, this is the first time we're seeing a Tesla without front or rear parking sensors. And I'll be interested to see how that works because it is entirely a camera-driven system. Just based on the interactions I've had with it so far, it hasn't been very good at all. So we will do a little bit of testing with that today to see exactly how it works. Whip around to the side here. Now, this is where you're going to notice some of the bigger changes taking place. You've got a different wheel design here for the entry level. Really love the look of this. It just looks really cool and futuristic. It is just an aero cover, so it's designed there for extra efficiency. Tyres have changed as well, so it's still a Michelin tyre, but they have made improvements here in terms of rolling resistance and also noise absorption as well. So these tyres actually have a foam layer inside that helps absorb noise, and we'll see whether that actually makes a difference when we go for a drive. Beneath the skin though, this is where the biggest change has been made to this vehicle in my opinion. They've got not only a more rigid structure, but that rigid structure has allowed them to install frequency selective dampers. And we'll test that out on our road here. We've got some high frequency bumps that we're going to be able to see how well this actually works on. So I'm excited to give that a little test. Door handles, all pretty much the same, but one thing that you will notice, and it's going to be a little hard to hear when we're standing out here, but have a listen to this. The door slam has changed. So once we're in the car, I'll run that through a couple more times so you can have a proper listen. But it's a big difference because I owned a Model 3 Performance and now own a Model Y. Whenever you close the door, it's really tinny and it sounds a bit cheap. Whereas this just has that sort of European vibe to it. And if you've driven a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz, you're going to know exactly what I mean there. When you shut the door, it feels confident and it sounds good. This now has that exact same sound. So prior to this, they had acoustic glass at the front and the sides. They've now increased that to the rest of the vehicle. So that should mean that we actually get better road noise as well. And the thing I did notice, this layer of glass here actually looks different to what I remember my Model 3 having. It may not be different, but it appears a little bit different, and that should translate to better road noise as well when we go for a spin. You still get the glass roof split into two sections. Come around to the back with me. More changes around here as well. So LED tail lights, but the interesting thing is when you do open the boot, that tail light is actually integrated within the boot now. So previously that used to sit there on its own. That's now fully integrated into the boot. So I think that is a pretty nice looking setup. The other thing that you'll notice as well is how far this protrudes at the back there, and you do notice it most when you're on the side. It sort of sticks out really nicely. This is going to be part of that aero stuff that they're doing here to help improve efficiency. So let me know what you reckon about the facelift here of the Model 3. Do you like the look of it? What do you think about the pricing? I'm keen for your feedback. Sorry about these flies. Let me know in the comments section below your thoughts on the updated Tesla Model 3. So we are inside the new Model 3. This is what the key looks like. There it is there. This is also what the key looks like. If you're a Tesla owner, you're predominantly just going to be using that. But if you do not want to use a phone, you can just use this. You tap it on the outside glass there and it unlocks the vehicle. They've actually moved the authentication location from here to here. So if you do want to start the vehicle or move the vehicle, you have to pop your key over there. What has changed inside the cabin? So there are a few sort of little bits and pieces here. I'll run you through them as we go. So LED lights along here, love this. So you can change the colors there. Just gives a bit of nice ambience to the cabin. And it just makes it look and feel a little bit more premium. They've changed these door cards as well. So this is like a fabric material that replaces the wood or the white colored trim that you had here, depending on which spec you went for. The glove box is slightly different too. Have a listen to this. When you pop it back up, it's now magnetic. So you can hear that as different to the previous system that they had. Screen looks the same, but it is slightly bigger. They've actually reduced the size of bezel around the edge here, so it actually takes up slightly more space. It's now 15.4 inches instead of 15. And then you'll also see some design changes down here as well. You still have excellent storage throughout the cabin. It just looks slightly different in terms of the materials. What about your touch points? So that is all still really nice and soft to the touch, so it's very comfortable while you're driving. How soft are they? We've got our durometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this cabin. If you do want to see how this car compares to others that we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description below. Now, build quality, what's it like? It feels really nice and solid. I did notice this is slightly out of alignment up the top here, but for the most part, it all actually looks pretty fine. I've had no issues with our Tesla Model Y since we bought it almost a couple of years ago now. So yep, that's all pretty good. And what does the door slam sound like? So I promised you before that I would give you a bit more of a closer up noise. So here it is. So all of that tinniness is gone. It just sounds really nice and premium. Let's talk infotainment. So I guess this is the cornerstone to the interior, mainly because it's pretty much the only thing in the interior. So let me run you through the steering wheel first, and then I'll jump over to here. I know it's a little bit confusing, but these are tied in together. So stalks are gone around the steering wheel, so you don't have anything there. That means your indicator, wipers, and other critical functions are here on the steering wheel. They're capacitive touch buttons, so just lightly touch that and it activates, and then you deactivate just by pushing that again. Does it work? Well, I'll explain when we go for a drive. You've got high beams there, and then you also have a button here that activates the camera while you're driving as well, so you can actually see around the vehicle, which is good. Wipers are there as well. Now, these allow you to interact with this, so you can actually customize some of the functions here on the steering wheel. So if you want a push and hold of this button, you can actually change what that does over here. This is also where you access your voice controls as well. They're actually not very good. In my Model Y and the previous Model 3, they never really work that well. They still don't work that well. When you try and ask for someone's name, it gives you the wrong person, doesn't really do text messages well, something that hopefully they will fix. But the good news is that that is a software-driven system and they're constantly updating the vehicle. So here in the center of, or here to the left of the screen rather, you've got maps. Now the maps can display in a number of ways. You can do satellite overlays, so you can see the proving ground there. We're sort of nestled in under the trees over here. and then you can also get it to show you where all the chargers are as well. And then when you click on some of the chargers, some of the Tesla ones, tell you when they're busy, how much they cost to charge, and even a few pictures there as well, just to keep you entertained. Outside of the mapping functions, you do have a number of other features here to play with. So inbuilt Spotify means you can play music through the vehicle's account. Keep in mind that some of these features will cost you $10 a month as part of a premium subscription. You will still have satellite navigation if you don't spend that $10 a month, along with access through your phone. But there are a number of other features here that you don't get access to in addition to that. They've now integrated Apple Music, Apple Podcasts in here as well. The only thing you don't really get is Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which I think is disappointing. They really need to work on that. Did play with this feature though, Zoom, so you can actually join Zoom meetings, and it uses the car's internal camera here to show you a picture and sort of broadcast it to the other people in the meeting. On the radio front, you have FM and DAB digital radio. They've kind of downgraded the stereo, so it's now a 9-speaker stereo instead of the multi, I think it was 17-speaker stereo that used to be in the previous generation car. You still get that in the long range, but you can't get that here in the base model. Sound system's fine, it's just not amazing, and the last one was amazing, and that's what I love about my Model Y. It's just a great sound system, but they've kind of tried to cut the cost out of this, even though they've jacked the price up. Other great functions here as well. You've got dash cam built into the vehicle that records to a USB there in the glove box. You've got Sentry mode as well, which is kind of like a security camera when you're not around the vehicle. Then you have a whole bunch of toys to play with here, including arcade games and a theater as well if you do want to watch YouTube, Netflix, Disney, that kind of thing. There are some other random things here as well, like you can actually use the car as a megaphone and talk to people on the outside. You can also play music outside, change the horn sound as well, so it's all kind of pointless stuff, but if you do need to sit in your car while it's charging, it's all there for you to play with. Probably one of my favourite features though when it comes to owning one of these vehicles, especially if you have kids, is the ability to actually run a child lock on either or both doors, along with a window lock, or independent of each other. So simply means that you have full control over what your kid's doing. I know my daughter keeps trying to open doors, press buttons and stuff, but one click of this and she can no longer do that, which is definitely good news to me. So yeah, look, there are a stack of other functions here, but that is just a highlight of all the main features. As an owner of one of these cars, I do find it easier to put the text in large text mode, which is what it's in at the moment. It can be quite distracting while you're driving to use some of these functions and press little buttons like that while you're trying to keep an eye on the road. So I think there is still a little bit of functionality they could be improving here. Let's talk about safety tech. So you have autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. You now finally have blind spot monitoring built into the wing mirror here, in addition to blind spot monitor that comes up here as a camera on the display. You've got cameras for parking out the rear and also the sides. You can see the quality of that's pretty good. Don't actually have physical parking sensors, and I'm going to play around with these when we go for a bit of a drive. I found that they didn't work that well, but I've got a couple of tests set up for us to see how well they actually work. Also, you have radar cruise control with a lane keeping assistant. You can also waste $5,000 or $10,000 on the full self-driving package. They actually gave that to all the customers for 30 days over Christmas a couple of years ago, and it just doesn't work. So I would not waste money on that stuff. I'm sure it will improve over time, but I just found it really clunky and actually just a bit dangerous. It just didn't really work that well at all. So don't waste your money is my opinion. And this is what the horn sounds like. Okay, so moving on to practicality, and we'll start off with your connectivity. Now, you've got two 60-watt wireless phone chargers down the front here, which is awesome. You've also got a 12-volt outlet down here as well, and a USB-C port in here. You can store your phone anywhere. It kind of, you have so much storage space here. In terms of your coffee cups, so if you've got a little sort of weirdo cup like me, fits in nicely there without getting de-lidded. In terms of your normal bottles, they slot into there as well, and you've got rubber teeth in place. And then on our big bottle, yes, that fits inside the door, which is good news. Other storage, so you've got a big old console here. You've got even more storage space down here as well. It's all sort of really nicely laid out. And then the glove box as well that I showed you before. A pretty small glove box, actually. So what about your comfort? I'll show you how that works. So this is your climate control screen. Heated and cooled seats are powered here. You can also set those to auto mode, so it'll basically switch cooling on if it needs to, or heating, or you can just manually do that. You can also manually run your climate controls, or switch them off entirely like I just did. In addition to that, when you don't have a passenger in the car, it'll just blow air onto the driver, which is a clever feature. It's going to save you a bit of energy. Like before, you move the air vents around by moving your finger about like that. You've also got camp mode, dog mode, and also a function there to keep the air conditioning running when you're not inside the vehicle. So it is pretty comprehensively fitted out. Seats are different as well, so they now come with heating and cooling. The seats are really comfortable. I've spent a bit of time in this car now, and yeah, it is just a really great place to be seated. I also like this new steering wheel. Sits nicely in the hand there as well. This is heated too. Now, in terms of your adjustments, you've got plenty of seat adjustments. You can go forwards, backwards. Your backrest can go forwards and backwards. You can lift the front, you can lift the back. You've got lumbar adjustment as well. Passenger seat is electrically adjustable too. And so is your steering wheel through the screen here. So you've got to dive through a couple of menus here to move the steering around, but you basically control it all here through the steering wheel and then via the screen as well. And on our reach test, all of this stuff is easy to reach while you're driving. Now, second row. There isn't a huge amount of room here, so knee room's fine. I've got my seat pretty far back, but toe room is terrible, and this has always kind of been an issue with the Model 3 and other sedan-based electric cars. It's not an issue in the Model Y because it sits higher off the ground and they can afford to lift that seat up a little bit, but yeah, it's a bit sort of compromised in terms of space. The other thing you'll find as well sitting in the back of the Model 3 is your head gets really hot because, I mean, look at that roof sloping down like that. It just gets really hot in the back here for taller passengers. So just something to keep in mind. You've got lights up here. You've got hooks up there as well. Map pockets in the back of the seats. You've got a center armrest here with 2 cup holders as well if you need them. ISOFIX points on your outboard seats. Now, this is where Tesla got into a little bit of a trouble here in Australia. Every car that's sold here that is shaped like this, utes are an exception to this rule, needs to have 3 top tether points here in the second row. For some reason, Tesla, their top tether point is somewhat inaccessible, so it doesn't meet the Australian standards, and they basically had to stop selling this vehicle and stop delivering it to customers, which is why we had to rent this. So I think it's going to be an easy fix. Like I said before, BYD went through the same thing with the Atto 3, and they solved that without too many dramas. So that is just one of those silly rules they need to get sorted, but one that Tesla should have known about. Now, let's talk about this. There is a screen here in the second row, and if I hit play, I've got one of the CarExpert YouTube videos playing there, which is great. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Everyone thinks it's sort of nice and cool and stuff, but I think it is pointless. And if they've put all of their resources into putting this screen into here instead of improving some of the usability things like the lack of tow room here or the amount of heat that comes in through the cabin, I just think it's disappointing they've wasted so much energy on this. And the reason I say that is it's in such an inconvenient location. You can just imagine if you had kids back here, they're just going to be craning their necks down to look at this screen. It's why most other brands have screens in the back of the seat, so you can actually just be in a comfortable seating position. I just think the location of that is really silly, especially if you're going to be playing videos and stuff on it. Ultimately, if you are going to be using it just to control climate, that's fine because you only interact with it briefly. But yeah, ultimately, as a device there to keep the kids busy and even playing games on it, I just don't see the logic to it. So let's see how long that lasts and whether they do finally give you the option of putting them in the back of the seats, because that would actually be useful and something that I would definitely want to do. Down here, you've also got air vents and 2 USB-C ports. LED lights continue in the back here. And what about our window test? Let's see if it goes all the way down. So they're auto up and down windows. Oh, it only goes like halfway down. How strange. So cargo space. In my mind, this is one of the best features of a Tesla. Just the packaging they've been able to achieve with their vehicles. So now you've got just under 600 litres of cargo space available here in the boot, which is a step forward from where it was. So you've got plenty of storage under here, off to the sides as well, and it's really quite long too. So it fits laptop bag in without any dramas, and then suitcase in as well, which is really good. And you've got almost 100 litres of cargo space under the front as well, so plenty of storage options there. Now, before we go for a spin, let me run you through charging. So you have AC and DC charging. DC charging occurs at a rate of 170 kilowatt peak, average rate of 100 kilowatts. It is a 60 kilowatt hour nominal capacity battery. It's an LFP battery as well, which means you can charge it all the way through to 100% constantly. In fact, that's what Tesla advises you to do. The lithium ion battery is slightly different, where you have to kind of just sit at the 80% mark as opposed to charging it full unless you're going for a longer drive. In addition to that, AC charging occurs at up to 3-phase 11 kilowatts. In terms of the charge rates, they're not the fastest in the world. We're seeing much better charge rates from Korean brands, but given it is a smaller battery, it's not the end of the world. It could just be slightly quicker, in my opinion. Okay, so we're on the road in the Model 3. Let me run through the elephant in the room first. No, not me. The no stalk situation. This indicator setup, when I first heard about this, I thought that is so stupid and will be so annoying and I don't like it. But after driving the car for like 5 minutes, it became second nature. You just push it on and then when you're done, you push it again. So the only time it's a bit fiddly is when you're doing low speed maneuvers where you have to be sort of on and off with the indicators, but I think you will get used to it eventually. And high beam, you just push that button. It's all sort of really quite straightforward. It is still a downside. There is no head-up display. I mean, that is something that they definitely need to sort out and just get with the times and put a head-up display in, because it is annoying having to look down here constantly. Now, those things to one side, what are we working with here? So the entry level is only rear-wheel drive, so you don't have a motor over the front. That means it actually doesn't weigh that much. It tips the scales at just over 1,700 kilos, which for an electric vehicle is quite light, even though it actually sounds like a lot. But single electric motor on the rear axle. Tesla doesn't disclose power and torque figures, but it's my understanding that it's just over 200 kilowatts of power and a little over 400 newton meters of torque, which is excellent for a smaller rear-wheel drive vehicle. And that means when you do sort of get on the throttle, it actually really punches you nicely in the back. That acceleration surge feels far more urgent than it did previously. So that is all quite impressive. Now, the next thing that you're going to notice here inside the cabin is how quiet it is. And I think for me, as a previous Tesla Model 3 owner, now own a Model Y, but same thing applies here. It is pretty noisy out on the road, and noise suppression isn't one of its upsides, but here it is just dead silent inside the cabin, especially at low speeds. You can't hear anything. And I think the most evident thing for me is actually the horn. You hit the horn, I can't even hear it inside the cabin, like it is faintly heard. And I think that gives you an idea of how much extra noise suppression has been added into here to really just quieten everything down. But it's not all sort of rosy there. The tyres still do supply a fair bit of road noise into the cabin. That's what it sounded like when we put it up against our calibrated sound meter. If you do want to see how this car compares to others that we've tested before, you can see a link in the description below. Let's talk visibility. So you can see clearly down the front there. I love the way that this rakes forward and gives you great visibility out the windscreen. Wing mirrors are big enough. I love the fact that there is now a blind spot monitor built into here. It's still a little red light, but it's all you need just to know that there is a vehicle there in your blind spot. Visibility out the back is okay. The parcel shelf sits really high. In fact, the rear of the vehicle sits quite high, so it is a little bit tricky to see out the rear of at times, but you've got the cameras and all that sort of stuff to guide you around the place. It'd just be nice if there was a front camera. So at the moment you have a 360 minus front, I guess. I want to touch on economy as well. Again, this is one of the benefits you're going to get from going for the entry-level version of this vehicle. It is the lightest, and it means it is going to use the least amount of energy. We are averaging, so currently averaging 15.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Keep in mind, we have done all of our filming earlier today because it is bloody hot outside, so we wanted to get it all out of the way while it was cool. So that meant a lot of faster driving. This, when we got here today, was actually sitting at around the 13 kilowatt hours per 100k mark. So that to me is an incredibly good figure there in terms of the economy that you're getting out of the battery. Now let's talk about the ride. So frequency selective dampers. First thing I'm going to do is go down our, my chair is squeaking there every time I hit the throttle. That's interesting. I'll have a look at that in a second. So 130 k's an hour is the speed we attack our sine wave here. And this just gives us a good indication of what body control of a vehicle is like. It's the maximum speed limit here in Australia. Okay, excellent, that's really good. Now, Frequency selective damping, what is that? It's actually a new type of suspension system, and what it does is, with a typical suspension setup, it needs to be tuned for the vehicle, and you have one tune to work with, and that is pretty much all you get. You can then go the next step and go air suspension or adaptive damping, but again, for the engineering team, that requires a lot of effort put into tuning that suspension in a number of different conditions to make it work. Frequency selective damping, it's something that Hyundai and Kia moved to early on in the EV game, and now Tesla has followed their lead. It's basically a system that allows the vehicle to have different reactions to suspension inputs. On a high frequency input, which is bumps or cobblestones or corrugations, what it's able to do is soften out the suspension, so you're not getting those big harsh hits inside the cabin, which is what you were getting in previous generation Model 3 and also current generation Model Y. Then for low frequency inputs, and that is things like turning into a corner where you're getting that constant load on the suspension, it's able to then firm up, and that gives you I guess the benefit of having a flatter ride as well. So it's a suspension unit that has an external reservoir, and it gives you the best of those two worlds. So what I'm going to do later on, we'll get to our bumpy section. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the camera there as well. But a great suspension setup, and it means you don't have to have the complexity of an adaptive damping system here. And it means that in and around the city, the ride on this vehicle is completely transformed. It is totally different to the outgoing model. And if I compare it to my Model Y, I understand they're completely different sized vehicles, but the Model Y's ride is absolutely terrible. It is the worst in its segment by far. They did update the Model Y after we had ours delivered with a comfort suspension, but certainly my car, it is one of the things I hate the most about it, how poorly it rides. This is completely different. If they put this suspension into the facelift of the Model Y, I will be switching cars immediately because it makes a world of difference. Okay, now bumpy road time. This is going to give us a really good feel for what this new suspension setup is like. What we've got coming up here is a condensed sine wave. So this is what is referred to as a high frequency input. So you're constantly getting movement on the wheel there, and you'll be able to see on the outside GoPro here exactly what that looks like compared to what I'm feeling inside the vehicle. And I can't feel anything in here. Like, this is remarkably good. This gives you a really good indication on this terrible road here of just how much work has gone into making the ride significantly more comfortable. Now, what does all that mean when the speed picks up? So we're going to go for a lap of our ride and handling track. This is not the performance version. This is not meant to be sporty, but we test all of the cars in the same way back to back just to see what it feels like. And I'm curious to see what these eco tyres are like with this package. So we'll tip it in here. Oh, they're not very good. Yeah, there isn't a great deal of grip available from those tyres, and that leads to little traction. Steering feel is also actually surprisingly devoid of feel. I don't know what they've done there. Okay, so you can feel right here that it sits much flatter as the speed picks up. The fastest section along the back here. Yeah, there is certainly not a great deal of weight over the front there, which is making the front end feel quite light. Brake pedal feel isn't great either because it's mixing in regen, and then it's got moments there where it stops putting in regen, which is an absolute pain. Okay, and here's our back straight. All right, roll onto the throttle. Yeah, it is picking up speed very nicely up the back here. Awesome. All right, and then onto our brakes. So you'll see here as we hit that bump into the braking zone, it totally pulls out of regen, and yeah, it's not good. If you compare this to something like the new Ioniq 5N and EV6 as well, they actually use a brake-by-wire system, and it allows the pedal feel to be totally different to what is actually happening with the pedal. Here with Model 3, you go to dive on the pedal, it's basically inputting regen. It's also then going into the mechanical braking system when you exceed the limits of regen. But what it's then doing, because the regen is only driven through one axle in this vehicle, if you hit a bump on approach to your corner or whatever you're braking for, it pulls out of regen, so all of a sudden your deceleration rate changes. and it is quite unsettling. It's really unsettling as well if you get that effect mid-corner. If you're lifting out of the throttle to get a bit of regen to slow the vehicle up mid-corner, and then it's sort of pulling out of regen, you're getting this seesawing effect. So I think there is probably still a bit of work to be done here with Model 3 in terms of handling. Tesla did admit that they gave the Chinese Tesla engineers the role of ride and handling for Model 3, and I think that based on all of the other Chinese market vehicles we've driven here in Australia, one of their main weaknesses is ride and handling. So the ride is great, but just on the handling front it feels pretty sloppy. So I hope that with the performance version they're actually going to use people who know how to tune a performance vehicle, and it feels a little bit more reassuring. And obviously here with these eco tyres you're going to lose a whole bunch of traction out of them. So yeah, like I said, I understand this is not a sporty car. If you do want a sporty car this size, you're going to go buy a 3 Series. I mean, that's a no-brainer, but you know, look, it's fine once you sort of pick up speed a little bit, but it does get pretty sloppy as you approach its limits. Now let's test out the autonomy systems here. We do this at 70 k's an hour. It's just a good indication of how well the car is going to keep to its lane out on the freeway. The whole idea is that as we get more banked here on our oval, the car has to put more steering input in, more torque, and it gives us just a good indication of what it's like on the road. So let's set this to 70 k's an hour. Yeah, this is highly annoying as well. The constant nannying and warnings now that come up since they've enabled this cabin-facing camera to make sure you're paying attention. It doesn't really work very well. If you are like eating an apple or something and take your eyes off the road, it suddenly cracks it at you, so it is not a great feature. So anyway, our first lane here works fine. We'll jump over to the next lane, and then we will re-engage it here. Again, more warnings. Okay, so that is active, holding this lane really well. All right, and we'll jump over to the final lane up here. Let's see how it goes up here. So, okay, that. Okay. Is holding it nicely. It's not really staying in the center of the lane. It's kind of veering towards the line there, and it's giving us constant warnings about paying attention to the road, even though I'm looking straight ahead. Yeah, so look, it's good. Just not quite center in this lane, but yeah, this is a really great system. I've had a lot of time with this on the road. It does sometimes phantom brake, which is where it'll slam the brakes on if you know you're coming under an overpass or something like that, so you always have to be paying attention because you will cause a car accident when it has one of its sort of moments, but for the most part it actually works pretty well. Now let's quickly talk about no parking sensors and how well that works. So it's basically using the cameras around the vehicle to create a map of what's going on, and to be honest, it really doesn't work very well, and I just want to show you what it looks like. So it's giving you a graphical indication there of what it sees, and at the moment there's nothing in front of the car. We're on just grass, and it's telling me to stop because it thinks we're going to hit something, which is just crazy. So we've got a full actual car there as well, driving towards that now, so it has detected that. And again, it's telling me to stop because it thinks we're hitting stuff around the vehicle there. My biggest issue with all of this is that a camera in theory should work fine if, see, again, it's just going crazy there even though we're not anywhere near hitting anything. The biggest issue with a camera system like this is for smaller objects, and you got to think about it from the perspective that the cameras are all mounted quite high. It can't really see small objects that are concealed by the vehicle. And what I mean is things like witches' hats in our example here, but kids, bikes, all that sort of stuff. So we'll just test it out here where our witches' hats are. So it's detected the witches' hats there, which is fine. So I'll put that into reverse and we'll just drive forward towards the witches' hat here. See, now it's coming up with warnings about parking assist is degraded, camera view is blocked, even though it is like a perfectly sunny day and there's no problems at all. Just driving towards our cone here, still hasn't detected anything, and we've now nudged the front of that, so it hasn't noticed that at all. We'll try a bigger object like our whatever these things are here, the big boulder things. We'll see if it detects that. So I'll just enable this view. So there it is there, giant orange thing in front of the car. Okay, it looks like it's detected that. Okay, so it does work there, but now that has totally gone. And that has now vanished entirely. And we're now touching that, but it's not appearing here on the screen. So that's definitely not good. My biggest issue though is that, let's pretend you're parked in a garage and you're in a situation where you've parked your vehicle like this and there is something behind the vehicle now. It knows that for the next time you get into the car, it goes, okay, there's an object there, we're definitely not going to hit that. But my concern is what happens if you do park the vehicle and then a kid comes behind the vehicle when it's off and you get back in and it doesn't know that it's there. My concern is just that it's not going to pick this stuff up properly. Parking sensors, and we shot a video explaining how they work a little while ago. You can click up there to watch that. They're very simple devices. They send out radar waves, they can detect what's there and what's not there, and they tell the vehicle to stop if it has to. I mean, this doesn't even have basic stuff like rear cross traffic alert, which is the feature that stops the car from pulling out into traffic if there is a vehicle coming, because it doesn't have any radar sensors. They've totally gone away from using radar, and I just think it's really disappointing that I don't know, it just philosophically they just want to use cameras, which is fine, but ultimately it doesn't work. And I understand that you can update software and fix it over time, but if it's not working and it's a safety issue, they really need to look at going back to radar and just using what everyone already knows works best, because this definitely does not work as well as it should. Now, we also had a Kia Sorento at the same time as the Model 3, and I wanted to just see how a car would do this with parking sensors. So we drove the Sorento at the same objects, the witches had to start with, and this is what happened. We also did the same thing with the larger object. We drove towards it, the parking sensors detected it, and then the vehicle stopped. Now, final random thing I want to mention, I discovered that with my car a little while ago, if you push and hold the park button, it engages the emergency brake. So if for whatever reason you lose brake pedal or something happens and you want to be able to stop the car, you basically push and hold the park button and it will go into an emergency stop. There is no park button now. That menu only appears when you slow down, but discovered today you can actually get that menu to appear by swiping over and then just pushing and holding park. And it comes up there saying emergency brake applied, and it will stop the vehicle for you. So FYI, if you do ever have an emergency in this car and you do need to stop, just swipe across and hold the park button and it will come to a full stop. Righto, let's do some performance testing. We'll see how quickly the new Model 3 accelerates. I just want to mention our website, CarExpert, and if you Google Help Me CarExpert, it'll take you to a page on our site, inspired by CarWow, where we basically walk you through what we can offer you, all the different tools that we have on the website, including comparisons and also a car chooser if you're not exactly sure which type of vehicle that you want. Okay, so there is no sort of crazy acceleration modes here. The only thing you can change is steering feel. Ironically, there's not much of it, but you can go comfort, standard, sport, and then chill and standard in terms of acceleration. So all I'm going to do is just hit the throttle. We'll go all the way through to 120 so we can get our 80 to 120 overtaking speed as well. Worth calling out, it is hot today. Battery is down to 50% as well, so that may affect the acceleration times, but the claim is 6.1 seconds. So here we go. Nice and strong off the line there. Okay, there's 100. And there's 120. Okie dokie. Let's have a little look and see how we went. Okay, so 0 to 100, 6.25 seconds, so fairly close to the claim, and I suspect we're a little bit off there because of how hot it is and the battery state there as well. 80 to 120, 3.61 seconds. That's actually a pretty good number. It gives you an idea of just how much zip you have for overtaking. So we'll head back down and do a stop from 100 k's an hour. Okay, so get up to 100 k's an hour, hit the brakes. Okie dokie, just over 100 there, here we go. Okay. So how did it go? So 100 to 0, 2.77 seconds, 38.43 meters, so not amazing. Now the reason I say that is, again, just because it's here today, Kia Sorento managed to stop in 35 meters, so around 3 meters short of this. Obviously a much bigger vehicle, but it does come down to these tyres. So even though these tyres are going to save you energy because they're lower rolling resistance and they're designed for eco-friendly cars like this, you will sacrifice cornering performance and also braking performance as well, because they just don't have the same amount of grip that's afforded in a sportier or a standard tyre. So just something worth keeping in mind. Not the end of the world, but yep, that is where you're going to compromise slightly. Yeah, how quickly does the Model 3 go in reverse? Here we go. 24 kilometers an hour. So the updated Tesla Model 3, what do we reckon? Normally with a facelift, I just don't recommend you just go and buy it just because it's a facelift. This, on the other hand, feels like a completely different car. They've just done so much to this to improve a lot of the complaints that people had with the original, and it feels like a quantum leap forward. So on that regard, if you do want to upgrade, I think it's absolutely worth it, especially for the ride. I think the ride just transforms this car, so that's all great. In terms of the negatives, ditching parking sensors, I reckon that is a really stupid idea. It just doesn't work without parking sensors. It's so inaccurate and it just constantly doesn't know whether it's coming or going. In terms of the handling, I still think it's a bit sloppy. Those tyres, just the coefficient of grip on them is not very good. So if you do want to drive fast, this probably isn't the car for you. But in saying that, this isn't the type of car that people are buying to drive fast. So I'm not really sort of too fussed about that. So let me know what you reckon in the comments section below. Do you reckon you can get over the parking sensor stuff? Are you going to buy one of these? Are you going to upgrade? Are you going to switch from another type of car? Let me know in the comments section below. I'm keen for your thoughts. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. I really do hope they migrate all of these changes to the Model Y, because I'm definitely keen to upgrade if it comes with all this stuff. So yeah, but until next time, take it easy.